Thank you. Okay, so we'll begin with the usual invocations. Nice long Om at the beginning of each one. Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Om. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om. Sarva Mangala Mangalye Shive Sarvata Sadhike Sharanye Trambake Gauri Narayani Namostute. All right, namaste everyone. So we're welcome to Wednesday Night Mantras. We're now on week 3 of our 3-week series of the Śani or Saturn mantra, along with the Hanumān mantra. So just a quick recap. Śani or Saturn is the planet in our solar system whose energy regulates the fulfillment or manifestation of inauspicious karmas in our lives. So within the concept of Vedic astrology or Jyotisha, a very important a facet of one's existence, generally speaking, is the way in which Saturn is affecting you and what areas of your life it's going to have an effect on. And oftentimes for somebody getting a Vedic astrology reading, the point of greatest trepidation comes when you find out what your Saturn is going to do. Not that there aren't inauspicious things that can happen with other planets, generally speaking, and I'm not claiming to be a Jyotisha expert by any means, but it's kind of one of the things where Saturn is never really positively aspected in your birth chart as a general rule. It's always presenting difficulties or challenges for you to overcome in this lifetime. But that said, of course, Saturn being really the most important of all of the planetary energies that are affecting you, because those karmas that you are bringing with you into this lifetime are the greatest challenges that you need to face in order to be able to move on, right? So it's helpful in the sense of the astrological reading to know what challenges are going to be so that you can prepare yourself for them, right? And prepare yourself to meet them in the most conscious kind of way so that you can experience the karma, understand the karma, and then release the karma. So to that degree, what's interesting about this particular period of time that we are in now, Saturn is in retrograde. Saturn has a very long retrograde because it moves apparently very slowly in comparison to the other planets because its orbit is so tremendously large. I forget how many years it took the Voyager spacecraft to reach Saturn. It was a really long time for it to travel that far. But in this retrograde period, we are given, what's interesting is that normally when it's moving forwards, the energy of Saturn is very veiled. It's mysterious, it's dark, it's hard to penetrate and to understand. I mean, these are sort of like the deep, dark karmas that we're carrying around with us. During this retrograde period, it's like a window opening up into that Saturn energy, where things are much more clear. And it's not that it's not like reversing the karma or doing, or like fixing it for you in any way, but it is, opening up the energy of it so that you can understand it better and more effectively, let's just say. So work that's done on the Saturn karma during this time is more beneficial. It's more effective at this time than it is at other times during the year. Now, the Hanumān relationship, so each one of the planets in our solar system that is part of the Jyotisha paradigm, let's say, is connected also to a deity's energy, who is referred to as the planetary ruler of the day the deity is the ruler of the planet, or the planetary ruler. And what that basically means is that the deity has in some way some connection to that planet that allows them to manipulate the energy of that planet in such a way that it can make it more effective for you. So in terms of other planets, typically the way I tend to think about it or work with people on it is that the energy of the planetary ruler is going to determine whether or not you'll really be affected very significantly by that planet's energy or not. And so, when I do like a planetary alignment series and we go through each of the 9 different energies and their rulers, what's going to be determined there is whether or not that planet's energy is affecting you beneficially or not. And if it's beneficial, then the planetary ruler will give you more of it, right? And if it's going to be, what they call malefic or a difficult energy for you, then the planetary ruler will help to reduce the effect of it on you. In this case, with Hanuman as the planetary ruler of Saturn, remember there was that story from the Ramayana in which Hanuman released Saturn from the dungeons of the demon king Ravana, and as a kind of token of gratitude, Saturn basically said, anyone who uses one of your mantras will be looked upon favorably by me, right? So Hanuman effectively created that relationship at that time, and then became the planetary ruler of Saturn, which is sort of one of those mythological kinds of things, which we're going to talk more about now. So hence we're getting that window into the Saturn energy provided by the retrograde, and then we're also adding on top of that this Hanumān mantra to make sure that we get the most out of that situation, right? So that what we receive from Saturn during this retrograde period of time will be the best possible thing that we can receive. So there's a lot to be gained in this situation. And, in general, if you go to a Vedic astrologer and get a reading done and get an understanding of what's happening with your Saturn there, especially if it's a really difficult Saturn aspect, then Hanuman is for you, right? He can help you to navigate that whole situation. So I wanted to talk just very briefly, because this is a deep subject, about Hanuman himself, and a little bit of what's going on here when we work with this, because 9 times out of 10, when we are experiencing Hanuman in some way, it's in relationship to the story of the Ramayana and Hanuman's relationship with Rama, the 7th avatar of Vishnu. So in that story, Rama is battling against the demon king Ravana. It's a whole, allegorical kind of story about consciousness and ego and all of this kind of stuff. And Hanuman then plays a pivotal role in it. Rama meets Hanuman at a certain point in the story, and Hanuman recognizes who Rama is, an incarnation of divine consciousness, and immediately becomes his servant and pledges to help him in his battle against the demonic forces. And indeed, it is to be said that Rama could not have won the battle without Hanuman's help. And so within that, we see Hanuman as being sort of like the perfect devotee or humble servant, and he becomes this representation of selfless service itself. Hanuman has nothing to gain through any of these actions personally that he is doing. He's doing all of this out of seva, for the good of the earth, the universe, however it's all going to work out. And he's just serving. He's serving divine consciousness in the best possible way that he can. And so he serves kind of as a role model for our own ability to do that, right? Our own ability to put our selfishness and self-centered desires and wants, to put that aside and to do good stuff for the world because it's the right thing to do, right? And we personally have nothing to gain by doing it, nor do we seek out any kind of gain. We just do it in a spirit of humility literally because it's the right thing to do. People need help, and somebody's got to help them, and it might as well be you or me or whomever is willing to take on this energy of Hanuman. And indeed, the name Hanuman can be loosely derived from two different roots. The first one, Hana, meaning to subdue, and the second one, Man, comes from Manas, meaning the mind. So Hanuman, the one who has subdued his mind or his ego, right? So his ego is not a part of his actions. He works entirely as a selfless servant of the divine consciousness or the divine purpose in everything that's going on. So that is a hugely important aspect of Hanuman, and like I said, tends to be at the forefront. That said, Hanuman is also very multi-layered, multi-dimensional character. He's not limited to just this one story. The Ramayana, of course, is something that, even just as a piece of mythology, was intended to start at a particular time, and the story goes, when Rama is born, and it goes through a series of events, and at the end of the story, Rama dies, right? Just like any other person. So that's a relatively limited thing. Hanuman, on the other hand, is a divine being, and he was born at a certain point or incarnated on the earth, but he continues to move onwards. So within the mythology of it all, Hanuman is considered to be the son of the Vedic deity Vayu, who is sort of the representation of the element of air. The element of air, not coincidentally, is the one that is most directly resonates in the heart chakra, right? So Hanuman's heart chakra energy is very, very powerful. There's a wonderful book by an Ayurvedic practitioner named Robert Svoboda. It's called Agora, Aghora. And there's actually 3 volumes, and I forget which one he talks about this, but it's basically his experiences with this enlightened guru in India named Vimalananda. And Vimalananda goes through this whole thing at one point about the Ramayana, the story of the Ramayana, and how it's actually a metaphor for a tantric, like a journey of consciousness in a tantric practice. And within that idea of this tantric journey, the role that Hanuman plays is the prana energy that's happening. So if you were to take the Ramayana and symbolize it as your body, then Hanuman represents the prana energy that's moving through the chakras. It's your life force. It's what gives you power. essentially is your prana. So the degree to which your prana is at full strength and in full motion through the chakras and the various energy channels in your body, that determines literally how alive you are, right? So less prana moving around, not so alive, right? It's what happens when we get sick, and other things of that nature. Our prana it goes down to a low level. Very high prana, very, very rapid movement of prana through the body, intense vitality and health. And so prana we think of as being symbolized or manifests on the material plane as your breath, right? Which is, you inhaling and expelling air, essentially, which relates, of course, to Vayu, the wind deity or the air deity, and Hanuman is the son of Vayu. So it all kind of like wraps around itself and connects in. So as the son of this, relatively powerful deity, Hanuman has a lot of potential, let's just say. And he's able to manifest many things, and he gets even more and more powerful over time, especially as he serves Rama and increases the power of his bhakti, or his devotional energy. So he develops many siddhas, or kind of mystical or supernatural powers. The Ramayana is filled with these various different stories about. I think the one I like the most is Rama's brother Lakshmana, who's an important character in the story, is wounded in a battle, and he's dying. I think he has a poisoned wound, and there's a certain, they have a doctor there that's with them, and the doctor says, man, this poison is deadly, he's going to die. The only thing that can save him is this particular herb that's on this mountain that's, thousands of miles away up in the Himalayas. They're all the way down in the southern part of India at that time. And, it's like, it'd take months to get there and then months to get back, right? But Rama turns to Hanuman and says, can you do it? And Hanuman says, I will do it. And he leaps into the air and flies all the way up to the Himalayas at like supersonic speed, I guess, and gets there in a matter of minutes. And then he arrives at the mountain, but he can't remember at that point in time what the doctor said this herb looked like, right? And he's just surrounded by all these different plants and herbs and stuff on this mountain, and he doesn't know which one is the right one to get. So, rather than giving up at that point, he just realizes this is something that has to be done. It's got to be done. And so he grabs the entire mountain, lifts it up over his head, and flies back down to Rama's army and brings the entire mountain down, so that the doctor can then pick out the herb that he needs and create the antidote and save Lakshmana's life. So just these wonderful stories about these sort of super heroic feats that he is able to manifest as a result of his long journey of yogic practices that he had in fact done even before Rama came into his life. If he had not developed his consciousness to the point that he had, then he wouldn't have recognized who Rama was when Rama came to his village. And he was already sort of this very famous yogi at that time. So when we connect into this Hanuman energy, that's part of what we're developing, is this sort of tantric ability to become like superheroes, really. And it's very specific kind of a thing, superheroes in service, right? If we don't have bhakti or devotion to divine consciousness and the betterment or the alleviating of the suffering of others as our purpose, then we don't, there's nothing we can really accomplish this way, right? Hanuman's energy is just only goes that way. But within that idea, he can give us, these absolutely super heroic powers, and that's actually rather, and then within all of that, there are many layers beyond this that go into this kind of tantric aspect of Hanuman, as you work with Hanuman's energy, you can get deeper and deeper into these things. I'll show you just a quick. So, for example, images like this one, right? It's sort of a tantric image of Hanuman, and a very different one than a lot of the ones that we see. We see him carrying all the different weapons. There's Shiva's trident and Vishnu's discus down here. Durga's sword is held in one hand and all the other things, and he's got the multiple heads. There's Narasimha on one side, Varaha, Garuda, the eagle, is on the left here, etc., etc. It's representing all of his different tantric powers that are going on there. So there's a lot of depth to get into with this that goes even beyond sort of the I don't want to call it ordinary, but the more popular sort of bhakti aspect of Hanuman. And so what's down at the core of all of that is that Hanuman is as an existing sort of a being on the earth, is in fact the son of Vayu, the wind deity, but himself an incarnation of Shiva, the Lord of transformations. So Shiva has this whole interesting kind of way that he interacts in the Ramayana, which is to say that Shiva is at the root of the reason why things are happening the way they're happening, right? So there's a whole kind of story about how the demon king Ravana became so powerful because he was a very ardent devotee of Shiva, and Shiva granted him the incredible powers that he had, which caused all of this stuff to, the whole story to go into motion in the first place. But then, so you could think of Shiva as being sort of the cause of the whole thing. But then later on in the story, Shiva also manifests as Hanuman. He incarnates as Hanuman so that he can then help Rama to then defeat Ravana. It's one of, it's very Shiva-like to sort of operate in these seemingly contrary roles within a particular story. But within that, within the deeper practices of Hanuman, what we work our way into is how Hanuman is actually an incarnation of Shiva, a very, very powerful incarnation. There's a series of Shiva's incarnations called the Ekadashi Rudras, which are the 11 forms of Shiva, and Hanuman is the 11th, or sort of the ultimate or the climactic one. And so the Shiva power that's contained in Hanuman is very, very powerful, and is a wonderful bridge between these two kind of aspects of divine consciousness, Shiva on the one hand and Vishnu on the other hand. And Hanuman forms a bridge between them, which creates a very powerful kind of an energy for him. So this is all just really intended to kind of pique your curiosity about Hanuman, and maybe allow yourself to begin to think, beyond the Ramayana, and how can you interact with Hanuman in your life. And so that's one of the things that we're doing with our Hanumān mantra today. I'll just I'll go ahead and share this now, and then we'll move into our practice. Oops, hey, that wasn't what I wanted to share. Share screen. That one. Okay, there we go. I have too many windows open, I think. Getting myself confused. Okay, so here, this is really an interesting thing for me. This Bīja Mantra hum in Hanuman's mantra, because there's no other deities that have a Bīja Mantra which is like this, which is to say that most of the deities who have seed syllables that encapsulate their essence in some way, it's their own seed syllable. It's not anything else. It's just theirs, right? It's, gum is the seed syllable of Ganesha, and it has no other function, really, other than to generate Ganesha energy. But this seed syllable hum is actually also, we could say it's the Hanumān Bīja Mantra, but what it really is it's the Bīja Mantra of the throat chakra. right? Which is very, very, specifically connected to Shiva's energy, on the one hand, and also the the throat chakra is the sort of source of any kind of superheroic powers that we may have. They're all generated out of the throat chakra. It's where it all comes from, right? These kind of high expanded consciousness abilities that we are able to manifest through devotion, selfless service, and all of these things. The kind of weird stuff that you hear about gurus doing. So within this mantra, Hanuman is exercising a fully opened throat chakra. It's very much of this. It's very high powered energy, and so he's using that that throat chakra energy then to direct the energy of Saturn in this. He's using that intensity of supernatural or superheroic power that he has, divine power that he has, to help to direct the energy of Saturn towards the most beneficial possible result that we can get out of that particular karmic situation. Okay, so any questions about Hanuman before we begin? You can also sit with it and ask me later when we finish the practice. No? Okay, good. So let's go ahead and I'll share that again. And that's much better. And we can begin. So we'll start with the Saturn mantra. Om, prāṁ, prīṁ, prauṁ, śanaye, namaḥ. And we'll do 108 of those, and then we'll move on to Om, Hum, Hanumate, phaṭ, svāhā. So you just listen to me chant the mantra, and as you pick up the rhythm of the mantra in particular, then join in and we'll just chant it together. Okay, so coming into a place of stillness, take a nice deep cleansing breath. Inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. Another cleansing and centering breath, in through the nose, out through the mouth. And let's do one more of those. Om prāṁ prīṁ prauṁ śanaye namaḥ. 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 Om prāṁ prīṁ prauṁ sah. 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 Śanaye namaḥ. Om sah. Śanaye namaḥ. Om prāṁ prīṁ prauṁ 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 sah 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 śanaye namaḥ. Om prāṁ prīṁ prauṁ sah. 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 Śanaye namaḥ. Om ham hanumate ham phaṭ svāhā. 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 Om Ham Hanumate svāhā. Om ham hanumate ham phaṭ 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 svāhā. Om Ham Hanumate Nam phaṭ svāhā. Om Ham Hanumate Ham 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 phaṭ svāhā. Okay, so we've reached the conclusion of our Saturn and Hanuman practice. Posted the usual links into the chat there if you need them. And I'll go ahead and, of course, post this to the YouTube channel immediately after the session today so that you can check back in with it, especially if you're going to continue for the third week of the practice this time around. So we'll do the closing mantras, and then I'll stop the recording, and I can hang out and answer any questions or talk to you about anything related to this practice or anything you might want to talk about. Lovely to see you, Mayuri. I'm so glad you were able to drop in. All right. So nice long Om, then Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. May everyone everywhere be happy. 3 times, followed by Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste. Thank you for joining in. Hope this was an interesting and illuminating practice for you. Go ahead and stop the recording.